During the nu metal boom of the late 90s and early 2000s, Slipknot stood out as the heaviest, craziest, and most intimidating band among their peers. The band began in Des Moines, Iowa in the mid-2000s and soon expanded into a 9-piece band, which was rare for a heavy metal band. Add to that the imagery, which included uniforms and grotesque masks, and a monstrous sound that took nu metal to its limits, and fans got a band that was unlike any other. As time went on, Slipknot forged a reputation as one of modern metal's premier acts and a force to be reckoned with. So how did Slipknot rise to become one of the most influential metal acts of the 21st century? Keep watching as we explore the impressive and untold true story of Slipknot, from getting their start in Des Moines to spreading their disaster pieces worldwide for over 20 years. Beginnings and debut. Today, Slipknot is one of metal's most popular bands, having established a solid reputation thanks to their heavy sound and intimidating imagery. But before the Nine played to millions of their maggots worldwide, they were finding their footing in the local metal scene of Des Moines, Iowa for quite some time. Slipknot's original members came from different bands within the local scene. Guitarist Jim Root was a member of a band called Atomic Opera, while drummer Joey Jordison played with several bands, most notably the speed metal outfit Modifius. Drummer Sean Crahan, bassist Paul Gray, guitarist Donnie Steele, and Anders Colsafini were all involved in musical projects in Des Moines. And in the early 90s, they would collaborate one way or another in new bands. Put simply, the local metal scene in Des Moines was a very active network of musicians that worked together, resulting in countless projects. However, it was in 1995 when the seeds for Slipknot were planted. That year, Sean Crahan and Paul Gray, who had jammed together before, formed a band called the Pale Ones. The two recruited Colsafini to handle vocals, Steele as their guitarist, and Jordison as an additional drummer. As a result, Crahan moved to percussion along with Colsafini, who remained as the band's vocalist despite additional percussion duties. They then recruited a second guitarist, Josh Brainerd, who had played with Colsafini and Gray before in a death metal band. The Pale Ones ended up having 6 members and played their first gig at a private Halloween show on October 31st, 1995. Their first public performance was in November that same year, where they performed under the name Meld. Before the year ended, Jordison suggested the band change its name to Slipknot after one of their songs. The rest of the members agreed, and Slipknot became official. In 1996, the band unveiled their first ever release, a demo album titled Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. It had a limited release of only 1,000 copies, and despite garnering some attention from local radio stations, it failed to capture the attention of any record labels. In 1997, Slipknot enlisted Corey Taylor, previously from another Des Moines-based band, Stone Sour, as their new lead vocalist. Shortly after that, percussionist Colsafini left the band in September 1997 and Greg Welch took his place. The band released a 5-track demo the following year, which generated more interest from record labels. Soon after, they released an offer from Ross Robinson, a prominent producer who had worked on albums such as Korn's self-titled debut and Sepultura's Roots, to produce their first album. Meanwhile, Slipknot expanded to a 9-piece with the addition of Sid Wilson as their DJ. In July 1998, the band signed a $500,000 contract for 7 albums with Roadrunner Records and began work on their debut album. However, the recording process was interrupted by several member departures in the preceding months. Nonetheless, the band finally solidified its lineup during this time. Nearly a year later, in July 1999, Slipknot released their self-titled debut album. The band immediately set the bar high, distinguishing themselves from their nu metal counterparts with a distinctly heavier than usual sound, not to mention their signature imagery that included masks and uniforms. It demanded the attention of critics and fans and was a massive success. Slipknot toured multiple countries to promote the album and appeared at the 1999 edition of Ozfest. They quickly became known for their high energy and wild live performances. Slipknot went platinum within a year of its release, becoming the first Roadrunner record to achieve that distinction. The band quickly followed up with their second album, Iowa, which was released in 2001. Named after their home state, it built upon the standards set by their first album and is regarded as their heaviest work to date. Additionally, the band introduced modified masks, a tradition they continued for each new album. The album was another success, and Slipknot enjoyed an increase in their popularity after its release. It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200, and one of its singles, Left Behind, got the band its first Grammy nomination. Despite this, tensions within the band were reaching fever pitch. Personal demons were coming out, management issues were affecting the band, and several members were getting caught up in the dark side of the rock and roll lifestyle that included booze, drugs, and women. Years later, band members Corey Taylor, Sean Crahan, and Joey Jordison would admit that the band was in its darkest period while recording the album. Brief hiatus and continued success through the 2000s. After Iowa's release, the band went on hiatus in 2002 to cool off. Joey Jordison formed the band Murder Dolls during this period, featuring himself on guitars and Wednesday 13 on vocals. He also made his first public appearance without his Slipknot mask while promoting his new band on MTV. Meanwhile, Corey and guitarist Jim Root revived their old band Stone Sour, who released their self-titled debut album that same year. However, Corey's alcohol addiction was getting the better of him during this time. In 2003, he attempted to leap from the balcony of the Hyatt Hotel in Sunset Boulevard before he was stopped by fellow musician and label owner Thom Hazard. His wife at the time, who had supported him through his struggle with alcoholism, gave him an ultimatum: get clean or lose her. Corey became sober a couple years afterwards. Despite rumors about Slipknot's future, the band returned to the recording studio with renowned producer Rick Rubin in 2003 to work on their third album. Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, was released in May 2004 to widespread acclaim and reached high positions on charts in multiple countries. The album showcased a more melodic side of the band, and unlike its predecessors, did not include profanity in its lyrics. It featured one of the group's most well-received singles, Before I Forget, earning the band their first ever Grammy Award in 2006. After touring in support of the album, Slipknot went on another hiatus and the members focused on their musical projects again. It took the Nine another 3 years before reconvening for a new album, which materialized in the form of 2008's All Hope Is Gone. It was another success for the band and their first album to top the Billboard 200. However, it was also the last Slipknot album that featured founding members Joey Jordison and Paul Gray. The death of Paul Gray and exit of Joey Jordison. After wrapping up the All Hope Is Gone tour in 2009, Slipknot went on its third hiatus. Not long after, tragedy struck the band. On May 24, 2010, Slipknot's bassist Paul Gray was found dead in his hotel room in Urbandale, Iowa, and it was later confirmed that he had passed away due to an overdose. In the aftermath of Gray's death, the band was uncertain about their future and if they could go on without their founding bassist. But after some hesitation, the band hit the road again in 2011 and played a handful of gigs. The next year, they put out a compilation of their greatest hits titled Antennas to Hell as a tribute to Gray. This turned out to be the last project that Joey Jordison would be involved with. On December 12, 2013, Slipknot announced on their website that Joey had left the band because of personal reasons, leaving the metal world in shock as Joey was considered one of the band's main pillars. Joey clarified later that he was fired from Slipknot and he could never leave the band or their fans behind after being part of it for so many years. Joey didn't spill the beans about what caused his exit until 2016 when he revealed he had transverse myelitis, or TM, a rare disease that affects the spinal cord by causing inflammation. Turns out, Joey had been dealing with this since 2010, but didn't find out much later. The disease made it impossible for him to use his legs, severely hampering his playing ability. But he did manage to get back on his feet after some physical therapy and rehab. New members. Meanwhile, Slipknot carried on without Joey and released Five, the Gray Chapter, in 2014 with a new bassist and drummer. At first, their identities were kept secret, but after much speculation, it was finally confirmed that Alessandro Venturella is the new bassist and Jay Weinberg is behind the drums. The band proceeded to record their next album, We Are Not Your Kind, which was released in August 2019. However, longtime percussionist Chris Fenn left the band a few months before its release due to a payment dispute. He was replaced by someone fans called Tortilla Man due to his mask. Fenn's replacement was later confirmed to be Michael Pfaff, who was a member of Sean Crahan's side project, Dirty Little Rabbits. The death of Joey Jordison. Although Slipknot continued being successful despite losing a few members, they would again encounter another tragic loss. On July 26, 2021, their former drummer, Joey Jordison, passed away. He was 46 years old. The news took social media by storm, followed by an outpouring of tributes and condolences from fans and peers in the music industry, including his former band. Slipknot released a statement about Joey's death on their social media accounts. Without him, there would be no us. We mourn his loss with the entire Slipknot family. Slipknot's seventh album, The End So Far, was released in 2022 and dedicated to Joey's memory. The title's also fitting given that it's the final album to be released under Roadrunner Records based on the contract they signed back in 1998. While their contract with the label is finished after over 20 years, Slipknot still operates at full power. Whatever they do next, their beloved Maggots will be highly anticipated.